Shabbat Shalom. There you are, sleeping soundly in your house. Go back a few millennia, your house is a stone and plaster construction, and you hear a scraping on the wall. Scraping on the wall. It could be a badger, maybe a bear's wandered into the village, but it keeps going, and rocks begin to be removed subtly, carefully. And then suddenly you realize somebody is in your house. They have snuck in through the back wall, digging a hole into your house, and you didn't invite them. What do you do? What do you do? What does the Torah say you should do? This is a direct scenario in the Torah. You can pay attention when we read through Parashat Mishpatim, or you can look ahead and check. It's nighttime. That's why I said you were asleep at the start of the story. Most people didn't sleep that much during the day when they had to work constantly to keep from dying. So what do? It's nighttime. Kill them. I know we're hesitant on this, aren't we? We are well-mannered and civilized, and we live in a time where, generally speaking, kill them is not the right answer. And most of the time when people use the phrase kill them, it makes us uncomfortable. But the Torah does try to draw our attention to this, and the commentators make it explicit that if somebody is burrowing through the wall of your house in the middle of the night, they are coming in probably to steal something, and they are already prepared for your presence. Meaning, they know that at nighttime, most people are home in these places. And they know that at nighttime, most people are going to be alarmed by someone burrowing through the wall and trying to take their stuff. And then most people at nighttime are going to want them to stop taking their stuff. Therefore, the person who is digging through the wall has already screwed their courage to the sticking point. They have already made up their mind that if they encounter somebody inside the house, they will kill the occupant. How else would they think this is going to play out? You dig through the wall of a house, you should expect the owner to be inside. Therefore, if you are digging through the wall of the house, you have already committed yourself to the path of murder. Else, you wouldn't be coming at night. So, the owner of the house thus has the right to defend their life, which is, by clear definition of the situation, in jeopardy. You have the right to kill the person who is coming into the house at that point. Is this clear? Yeah. Now the lights come on. It's the middle of the afternoon. You were feeling a little poorly. You came over faint out in the fields. You went back into your house, and you decided to lie down for a little bit. And there is that scratching at the door or at the wall, and someone comes in. The sun is shining bright. What do? You identify. You don't kill them unless they then reveal that they have the intention to kill you. Why? Because the assumption we made last night doesn't work this afternoon. The assumption we made last night is anybody coming into the house is clearly expecting to find the occupant and thus is already prepared to commit murder. The person who is trying to sneak into my house during the day is not anticipating anyone will be home. Everyone else is hearing that rumbling too, right? Okay. Is it the microphone? Was I brushing it with my beard? I thought I kept it trimmed. I mean, I know my voice reverberates, but that just... All right, well, you know what? We'll just have to play along with whatever the technology is doing, and I'll check on it during the week. No, that's a truck. That's a truck. That's not me. Here I am becoming paranoid that I'm making weird noises. Yes?
I know it's all the subject, but we keep having someone with dementia entering houses in our neighborhood at night thinking it's their house and they're lucky they have people. What if you know that there is somebody doing things
Okay, well, first of all, let's come back to the daytime scenario, and then we will switch. So in the daytime scenario, you do not have, according to the Torah, you do not have permission to murder a thief. Because during the daytime, what is the thief expecting to do? Steal stuff. And believe it or not, you don't have the right to kill someone to protect your stuff. Judaism makes that very clear. Someone is out there trying to steal your cow, and you've got your bow and arrow, you don't get to kill them. You get to tell them to stop. You can absolutely threaten them, but you cannot murder a person because they touch your stuff. If they threaten you or your family or another innocent person, then by all means, you can stop them from carrying out that murderous plot, and you can do so at the expense of their life. Judaism is not pacifistic, as I've said multiple times. But if you think that all they're doing is taking things, you do not have permission to take their life. That is not a fair trade. During the daytime, the presumption is they were expecting an empty house. They're going to be just as surprised to see you as you are to see them. And their first instinct is going to be to run for their life. You don't have to do much more to make them get out of there. Because if they were brave enough to come into a house when somebody was there, they would have come at night when it was much less dangerous to be spotted. So clearly, they are doing their best to try and avoid people, even if they are a thief. And that means we do not have a priori, according to the Torah, the right to kill them. Now, if they come in and the first thing that comes through is a gun in their hand, all bets are off. Clearly, they're coming with lethal intention, and absolutely, you can use lethal force to stop them. If there are any indications that they are prepared to attack and harm the residents of the house, then yes, you of course have permission. But the Torah is talking about the two extreme cases, the nighttime and the daytime burglar. If you know there's somebody wandering around, if you know that there are problems with the sleepwalking neighbor, the kid who likes to play practical jokes on people, or somebody suffering from dementia, then as a community you should work together to try and solve that. And yes, you should probably not use a shoot first, ask questions later mentality if you know that the likely cause of the noise or disturbance is somebody that shouldn't be there, but is not coming with any evil intent. But that does make situations very hard, because someone else might have bad intent, and especially at night in the fog of war, as they say, it is very hard to differentiate. So that's hopefully clear enough. There is so much more, of course, to be said, but clear enough in general for what happens for the homeowner situation. Everybody with me? Excellent. What happens when we move to the larger scale? Let's take a look at the story of Dina. The story of Dina, which is Jacob's daughter, is one of the more painful stories throughout the book of Genesis, and there are lots of painful stories. As Jacob comes back to the land of Canaan, overcomes the trouble with his brother Esau, and just begins to settle down, his daughter Dina is kidnapped and raped and basically forced into marriage by the leaders of Shechem, the town of Shechem, which was the major polis, city-state in that region, and which Jacob and his family did not feel they could contend with under normal circumstances. So, what happens? What do two of her brothers, Shimon and Levi, do? These are her full brothers, as opposed to the other half-brothers in the family. Anybody know how they resolved the situation? That's half the story. No force. They say, look, we'll go along with this whole forced marriage thing, but you got to get circumcised because that's really important to all of us. And not just Shechem and the leadership of Shechem, all the guys in town need to get circumcised. And since the leaders of the town are, well, basically despots, as most people were in the ancient world, and still today, if given the chance, they command everybody in the town to be circumcised, and they do. And then what happens? And then they attack. On the third day of recovery, when apparently it's rather sore, as a debilitating amount of pain. Remember, we're talking pre-anesthesia here. the circumcision of a man in adulthood without anesthesia is definitely going to leave him incapacitated for a probably considerable amount of time. Shimon and Levi come into the town. They kill Shechem and the leadership and his family, and they kill everyone else too. And they take their sister Dina and come back. Is this tunneling during the night, or is this tunneling during the day? Is this okay? Did the Torah approve of this? See, this is one of those things where the Torah is frustratingly opaque. It doesn't tell us what they did was a good thing, and it doesn't tell us what they did was a bad thing. Now, their father Jacob criticizes them, and they retort that they did what they had to do to protect their sister. Their father Jacob goes back to criticizing them on his deathbed, calling them basically bloodthirsty murderers, which is not exactly how you want your father to say goodbye to you. The commentaries are divided, as any good Jewish commentary should be, on exactly whether what they did was right or wrong. The issue isn't about whether or not attacking Shechem, the man and the city leadership, was right or wrong. All of our commentaries agree that they had the right to basically do the raid on Entebbe, to get into the town, to murder this person that had raped and kidnapped their sister, and to extract her from their clutches, if you will. That was perfectly fine, legitimate. But we'll use Rambam and Ramban as the two symbols of the different argument. Rambam argues that all the other people in the town were fair game as well, because they were complicit with the actions of their leaders. They went along with it. They didn't rise up and say, how dare you kidnap and rape someone. This is one of the most heinous things you can imagine, and if you'll do that to someone else, you might do it to our family as well. And even if you wouldn't do it to our family, but only to strangers, that is still not the way we want our society to be made. In fact, I remember a few years ago, there were these places called Sodom and Gomorrah, and they got destroyed for treating strangers like this. Maybe we shouldn't be doing this, leaders of Shechem. Get out. But the people of Shechem didn't. Ramban, on the other hand, says, yeah, but the people of Shechem, you can't really call them complicit, because they too were captive to the leadership of Shechem. That yes, they went along with what Shechem said, but what were they supposed to do? In most of human history, if you have your local lord, king, baron, earl, whatever you want to call them, and they're the ones in charge, if they tell you to do something, you do it. And if they do something you don't like, you put up with it, because the alternative is being stabbed. And for most of human history, humans have been unwilling to be stabbed, except in the most extreme circumstances. And so Ramban says the people of Shechem, that was a step too far for Shimon and Levi. They had every right and were perfectly justified in carrying out their attack to rescue their sister, but they did not have the right to murder the other people of Shechem, only to murder the actual captors and people that directly were involved. Yep. At what point, let me see if I can summarize it, and then you can tell me whether I got your question. At what point, despite the risk, are you morally obligated to stand up to dictators and others that are doing things that are evil? We can also look at their complicity if we look at the story of Shem, which again we're coming up to in just a few weeks, so I'm giving you guys the preview, but make sure you read it in all of its detail. When the leaders of Shem turn to the people, they actually persuade them to go along with the circumcision ritual. They say, hey, look, guys, all we got to do is, circumcise ourselves, and then we can intermarry with them, and we'll get all their stuff. And that last line is the one that often troubles commentators, of saying, okay, wait, so the people of Shem were willing to go along with this, not because they were kowtowed and intimidated by their leaders, but because they were anticipating benefit. They were not anticipating benefit through illegality, I mean, the whole rape thing notwithstanding, but for the rest of them, they were expecting to absorb Jacob's family into their population and to get rich by doing so, because as we know, Jacob was incredibly rich when he came back from Laban's household.
Regardless of their motives, did they accept the covenant though when they circumcised themselves?
No, not exactly. So first of all, there's no indication that this was an actual conversion, because at this time it was still unclear how people joined this group that were following Adonai. It seemed by marriage only, but it's a little vague of exactly how that process works. We certainly don't hear any discussions of mikveh or of accepting the yoke of the commandments, because the commandments hadn't been given yet. So it's not really that we can call this a covenantal relationship at this stage in our history. Yes, you're welcoming them in. You're pretending that you are going to accept this merging of the two peoples, and then you turn on them when they are most vulnerable and murder them. It's problematic. All right, now obviously I think most of you here are very clever people. That's why you figured out coming to services is a very good thing to do. You can probably begin to see that there is room for a discussion in modernity based upon many of these same principles. You're probably all aware there's a war going on, right? And you may be aware that one of the largest conversations and largest controversies about the current conflict is the question of collateral damage. Most countries around the world recognize that Israel has every right and indeed an obligation to attack those who attacked it, to target Hamas, to rescue the hostages. This is something that is usually, again, by all countries that are not just rooting for Israel's destruction, that country after country says absolutely Israel is justified in attacking Hamas and in doing what's necessary to recover the hostages. And of course, it goes without saying, they had every right to attack and destroy anybody who stepped into their territory and carried out the murderous attacks that happened on October 7th. But the by any means necessary clause is the one that gets a great deal of attention and a great deal of confusion. By any means necessary, does that mean literally by any means necessary? Or are there limits to what can be carried out in the pursuit of the overall objection of destroying Hamas and rescuing the hostages? Are they acting as Shimon and Levi? And if so, are they acting correctly as Shimon and Levi did, or are they acting incorrectly as Shimon and Levi did? This is the question that continues to be discussed. Now, I will first of all point out that most of the conversation around this topic that is taking place in such elevated academic forums as Instagram or TikTok are not really helpful to raising the level of discourse. And they are not really investigating the question of situation A, B, or C, but are more interested in just beating the drum of their particular mantra, whatever that might be, and they're going to continue to do that regardless of any additional evidence, discussion, or insight. So let's set aside that level of discourse. It's beneath us. But Israel herself engages in this discussion. You may have noticed, despite what the Instagram TikTok people may say, Israel has not carpet-bombed Gaza. All right, for those of you that are too young to know what carpet bombing looks like, go look it up and actually see what it means to level an entire city or region with aerial bombardment of which the population has no defense. Right? What Israel has done is not carpet bombed. They have used a great deal of munitions, and proportional to the amount of munitions, the actual number of casualties, civilian and military, is incredibly low. Usually when you drop that many thousands and thousands of bombs, you kill many, many tens of thousands of people. Israel has not, because Israel has not been trying to kill more than necessary. I know the numbers don't always look like that, and certainly the rhetoric of many people who attack and oppose Israel don't sound like that. But if you do the math, it actually works out that Israel has been showing a remarkable amount of discretion in how they have pursued the war. But yet, we can still say, have all of those deaths been necessary? And that's where we need to continue to review the same questions that were provoked by the tunneling into the house or the attack on Shechem by Levi and Shimon. I think I saw your hand up. Did I cover what you were saying? No? Okay. Maybe you were just scratching your head. It's peripheral vision's not my strong suit. So the question becomes, is collateral damage something that Judaism is concerned about? Does Judaism recognize it as moral or immoral, and how do we define it? And the short answer is yes to all of that. Judaism throughout the Torah, throughout the Tanakh, and throughout rabbinic literature says we do not have blanket permission to kill whomever wish to kill, because we think that maybe at some point they might eventually throw themselves at ourselves and propose a danger. You can't kill someone for looking at you the wrong way walking down the street. A nation cannot kill another nation simply because they think, you know what, in 20 years they might pose a threat. There is absolutely a level where Israel and Judaism says we don't behave in that sort of aggression. And that has been to our credit, since most other countries throughout history have done exactly that. But Judaism has not. And likewise, Judaism and Torah tells us very clearly that in the needs of a moment, you are allowed to pursue your military objectives in a way that will cause collateral damage if that is the only way to secure the military objective. In the ancient world, you were lucky if you were able to get your opponent's army to meet you on the field of battle. If you were fighting them, usually they would do the smart thing and hide behind their walls. Right? Walls are really handy when you don't want people to stab you. That's why the burglar has to tunnel through it to get to you. But city walls are not so easily breached. And for most of our history, people would hide behind their walls, and then the attacking army would besiege the city. They would surround the city, and they would do so in a way to try and force the capitulation of the people in the city. Was everybody in that city a combatant in the modern definition of the word? Was everyone in that city holding a shield and spear, manning the walls? Was everyone in that city even necessarily hostile to the army of Israel or Judea or any of our different historical periods? Also probably not. I would imagine most people in that city would like nothing more than for the whole war to go away. Israel would engage in siege warfare the same as any other country, whether that would be storming the walls or whether it would be using various catapults, trebuchets, and other forms of flinging technology to hurl things over the walls and into the cities. These were not laser-guided bombs. These were not well-manned drones. These were random attacks into the city, which might have the effect of knocking down a bit of the wall, but more often than not was simply to destroy the ability of the defenders to continue to live in peace behind those walls, hoping that they would either A, surrender, or B, come out and try to stop you from doing this anymore, so that you could actually force the battle and end the siege. Was that collateral damage throughout history when someone would fire a catapult over a wall into a city? Or is that simply what you must do in order to pursue a military goal? It is the latter. As much as it makes us uncomfortable to imagine the effects, and as much as we can be disgusted by the number of countries that have waged aggressive wars through this technology in order to capture land that didn't belong to them, that was not theirs, and to destroy people that pose no threats to them, militarily, this is how war is waged. And our tradition says that when the sword is unsheathed, innocents will die along with those that are guilty. That is why we avoid war at all costs, recognizing that this is not a desirable outcome. But when war comes, we also recognize it is an inevitable outcome. You're all with me so far. So does that mean that all the shackles are off then? Collateral damage is inconsequential. This is simply war. War is hell, and Israel should bring hell to everyone as needed. Well, the Israeli government and the Israeli military do not seem to think so. Yes, they are pursuing the war very aggressively, as is no surprise when when it's been demonstrated to you that Hamas is not only interested in armed conflict with Israel, but is particularly aiming to slaughter the most vulnerable, the most exposed, the least armed, and the least combatant among the population, then yes, Israel is absolutely justified in pursuing the war aggressively. And that means that sometimes Israel will take actions which on the surface may look difficult, uncomfortable, even reprehensible. If Israel attacks where there is a school, where there is a hospital, where there is residential neighborhoods, yes, we can say that in the abstract, in a white room scenario, that is something we never want to happen. But when Israel has now gone into those areas and brings out the videos showing that in this school, here were these munitions. In this hospital, here were these command centers. In these residential areas, here were these rooms that were used for planning and used for marshaling the forces that would then strike out against Israel. Then we recognize that although the collateral damage breaks our heart, there is no other way to pursue the destruction of Hamas. We should, like our commentators said, especially Ramban, have sympathy for the people of Shechem, have sympathy for the people of Gaza. They are also captive under Hamas, and although many of them may support Hamas in some ways, most of them do not want to see this level of bloody conflict being rained down upon them, and yet Hamas knew this was exactly what they were starting when they began their attack against Israel. In fact, they hoped that they would provoke Israel into doing things exactly as Israel feels they must do. But we can still be sympathetic to the people who live within the Gaza Strip. They shouldn't have to suffer this. But it is not up to Israel to stop the suffering. Israel has done everything it can to minimize that suffering while pursuing the correct military objective. Ultimately, it is up to Hamas, and in the larger sense, up to the Palestinians themselves. Hopefully through the support of the world and international community that can help them be weaned away from terrorism as an ideology for solving their problems, and move towards an understanding that a nation can be built, a life can exist for them and their children that doesn't involve either the retaliatory attacks of Israel or the oppression of Hamas. That is where we have to put our hope and put our prayers, that eventually this will be resolved in that direction. But in the meantime, as much as it pains us to read the headlines, to see the videos, and to hear about the loss of life, we have to recognize that sometimes this is the only path forward. It should be the last time we have to walk this path. Never again should the young people of Israel be forced into the situations of making these terrible decisions and taking lives that could have been spared if Hamas had only behaved differently. But until that time passes, they will do what they must do, and they will continue to do it with the best of our teachings, our wisdom, and the dignity of our people. Shabbat Shalom.